Back to another episode of Unveiling History. My name is Jacob Wright and I'll be your host. We have a great show for you tonight. We will be discussing the Dirty War that started in Argentina in 1955. We have our historian, Luis Gonzalez, live from Argentina to tell us more about it.
Good afternoon, Jacob. The Dirty War started with a coup d'etat against Argentina's President Juan Perón in 1955. This sparked a long series of conflicts between the government and multiple different military forces. Juan Perón was Argentina's president from 1946 until 1955. He was democratically elected 3 times. He created Peronism and the Peronist Party. He was overthrown after an army-navy revolt led by democratically inspired officers who reflected growing popular discontent with inflation and corruption.
Adding more to Peronism, Peronism was a political movement which had Juan Perón himself on top of an authoritarian system. The pillars of the Peronist ideology, known as the 3 flags, are social justice, economic independence, and political sovereignty. It went against the extremes of both communism and capitalism, while it incorporated corporatism. Why don't you tell us more about Peronism? Adding more to Peronism, Peronism was a political movement which had Juan Perón himself on top of an authoritarian system. The pillars of the Peronist ideology, known as the 3 flags, are social justice, economic independence, and political sovereignty. It went against the extremes of both communism and capitalism, while it incorporated corporatism. Why don't you tell us more about Peronism?
There are a few conflicts between the left-wing and right-wing Peronists. The Assassin Massacre happened the day Juan Perón returned from exile in 1973. The right-wing Peronists opened fire with sniper rifles at left-wings. There were 13 dead and 365 injured. Juan Perón went to Paraguay. He made friends with the Paraguayan dictator. Unfortunately, when he came back, he suffered a heart attack and his wife, Isabel Perón, took over Argentina, but she was immediately overthrown by a coup d'etat by Jorge Rafael Videla. Eventually, Jorge Rafael Videla's military junta took over Argentina and established a dictatorship. They killed anyone who opposed their movement. This is when the disappeared events happened.
That's right, 30,000 civilians were secretly kidnapped by the government. They were tortured and eventually murdered. The junta managed to keep this hidden from other countries until the Mothers of the Plaza de Mayo came around. They were a group of women who lost their children and grandchildren and called for international attention on the kidnappings. The Mothers of the Plaza de Mayo marched in 1977 in front of Argentina's presidential palace to show their anger at the government, even when the government could possibly have them killed. Through more and more protests, the movement grew very large. Overall, they played a major part in ending the Dirty War. To add to that, Videla's secrets were eventually unveiled. 1 year before he was taken out of power, Jorge Rafael Videla attacked the Falkland Islands that were controlled by Britain. They hoped that the U.S. would support their cause, but they were already on the British side. Argentina was defeated in 74 days. This added to the already decreasing power and popularity of Videla, thus paving the way for him being taken out of power.
Videla was found guilty of abusing the human rights and crimes against humanity. He was persecuted in the trial of the juntas for the disappearance and murder of all 30,000 civilians. He was sentenced to prison for life in a civilian prison.
Junta was originally intended to end left-wing terrorism, but they ended up killing civilians themselves. Peace came later on when Raúl Alfonsín was democratically elected in 1983. Thanks for watching today's show. Make sure you tune in next week when we cover the Iran hostage crisis.
Audio Jungle.